So, post-training regime. Protein shake, ice bath, massage? No. Coffee, marshmallows, 2 hours of golden cheetah. Okay, we've done this before, but we're going to do it again. Our cyclist, let's call him Jean-Francois. He looks like a Jean-Francois to me. He's out training with his buddies. Mario, Yoshi, Luigi, and Princess Peach, of course. Now they want to train efficiently, and one of the best ways to do that is in the pace line. The guys on the pace side ride at one speed, and as they come through, they move across, pulling in front of the guy on the resting side so the group travels along at the same speed. We all know the things to avoid. You come through at the same speed, because otherwise you're far off the front and you leave a huge gap to the guy behind you. Also, when you move through, you need to make sure that you pull across tight in front of the guy inside you. So Yoshi needs to pull tight across Mario, otherwise again you leave a big gap and the group has to go faster. The other important thing to remember is that when Yoshi pulls across here in front of Mario, he only needs to ease off a little bit. This side should only be going slightly slower than this side. That can be as simple as just pedaling a little bit more softly. You don't need to brake, you don't need to do anything drastic. Just enough so that Luigi can easily come through and move in front without having to change speed. Now the nice thing here is that Jean-Francois and his mates regularly train together. They know each other. They know exactly how they ride. They know that Mario tends to push it a little bit too hard. They know that Luigi is a little bit inconsistent with his line, but they make accommodations for that. Now, what happens when one day they're out training and Donkey Kong wants to come along? Because we all know what Donkey Kong is like, and they're not familiar with riding with him. How about we have a look at some real world footage, see the problems that this can cause and how best you can deal with them.
Here we go then, this is our usual Saturday club run. Slightly unusual this week in that we had a load of guys turn up, and it was pretty clear from the off that most of them wanted to be out in the fast group, have a good workout and push the pace along a little. Now that's somewhat unusual, and it meant that whilst there was still a social ride, there was a pretty big group out in some of these lanes. That combined with the fact that we changed our route, it meant we were going through quite a lot of right turns, it meant the pace was quite up and down, and then we were using some fairly narrow lanes, led to a somewhat sketchy ride. And you can probably see here we're two abreast, we're riding through and off at a reasonable pace in some pretty tight lanes with cars coming the other way, and it was getting a little bit hairy even at this point. But that's not really what I want to talk about here. There was another issue, a separate issue. There's a lot of guys that come out on the Saturday ride, that come out every week, they're really familiar with each other, they're all good mates, and they know how each other ride. Now on this occasion we had a big contingent of guys from the University of Essex turn up, really great lads, really friendly, but we don't ride with them very often, we're not so familiar with them. So they got involved in the fast group. They're all good, strong lads. They can ride their bikes at a decent pace, but they're maybe not as experienced as some of the other guys, and maybe not as familiar with the way that we ride. And probably, as importantly, we're not as familiar with how they ride. So, you can see already from the footage that we've looked at so far, there's been a few gaps, The group's been a bit stretched on occasions, and it's a little bit choppy. It's not terrible, it really isn't terrible. And if I pick on anyone during this video, it's really just to illustrate things. Everybody makes mistakes, and I'm not singling out any one person. So you can see here we're traveling at 42k an hour, which is a good pace. And I'm just coming to the front here. I think that's a lad called Andrew who's just changed in the front. And he's taking a good solid turn there, taking a little bit longer than I would normally expect for someone to come through and take their turn in the front, but he's done what's required of him. You know, there's no problem here. We've changed our the way we're riding, given the wind direction. Just coming through a junction, just getting ourselves organised, some oncoming traffic, and again, few little gaps, but no real big issues. So, what's the concern that everyone has? Well, the main concern seemed to be that we got quite a two-paced ride. And by that, what I mean is that the resting line and the pace line, the guys that are working to come through, the differences in between their speed was quite high. The problem that will give you is that the guys will have to work really hard to jump onto the back of the pace line, and that when people are coming onto the slowing line, that they're going to end up leaving gaps, because as they pull across, the other line going slower, or they ease off too much. But we're able to see that in the footage in a minute. In actual fact, you can see here one of the problems. Trevor's just come through. He's freewheeling. Now, why is he freewheeling? You should never be freewheeling when you come through on the front. If you're freewheeling, you've done something wrong. Trevor won't mind me picking on him. He's a good lad, and he'll take it on the chin. But clearly, something's gone wrong there. It's either Trevor's come through too hard, or the slow line is decelerating too much. And you can just kind of see there's more gaps opening up all the time. And the guy that's just changed the front has left another big gap. And all of a sudden, we're slowing down on the resting line. It's all coming back towards us, and there's a big gap there, and I'm having to push quite hard to get back onto the wheel. The pace has dropped again, so it's a little bit inconsistent, it's a little bit choppy. The pace is going up again now. We are going slightly downhill into some corners, so maybe not the best area to be looking at it, but really there's a couple of things going on there that mean that it's not as consistent. That makes riders nervous, and I don't know if you've noticed, but as you're going past the guys, you can just see that those that are in the drops, they've just got their fingers on the brake levers, and that's always a telltale sign when guys are just covering their brake levers. It's because they're not entirely comfortable with the group they're in, and they're feeling a little bit twitchy, a little bit nervous about the way things are going. But anyway, we were still riding at a good pace. The guys were reasonably comfortable together, and we were making good progress in what was quite a brisk wind out there. So let's just have a think about the main issue that the guys were complaining about, and let's go back to Mario and his mates and see exactly what the problem was.
If he pulls across in front of Mario and backs right off the gas, almost stops, then Mario and Luigi have to hit the brakes. Yoshi and Princess Peach have come through, and Luigi's had to leave a gap and has got to chase hard to get back on the back. Again, we have a problem.
There's a good example of exactly that problem coming up here, and again, if I name any people and picking anyone, it's nothing personal, it's just what I've seen from the footage. So we're going up a slight rise here. Pace is relatively good, it's 34-35k an hour, it's just building slightly. And there's a guy on the red bike here, Josh, who's about to come to the front, comes through, nice, we're doing 36k an hour, and he's come onto the slow side, and all of a sudden everyone's slowed. We've got everyone on the brakes in front of me, we're down to 32k an hour, we've just gone backwards, and now I have to do a big 600 watt effort to get onto Ian's wheel to come through and do my turn, and we're straight back up to 38k an hour. So that's exactly the problem, and you know, Josh probably thinks he's pulled across and just eased off the pedals, you know, the right amount, as you know the guys have probably been telling him to do. But what he's actually done is he's pushed the guys in the resting line backwards, and you get the accordion effect, and the guys at the back are having to brake. So that's not great. But what do we do about that? Do we sit on the back and moan and complain and you know, take the piss? No. You know, what I did was I rode up to him, put my hand on his shoulder, and said, you know, you're easing off a little bit too much there, buddy. I think, you know, far too often we can forget that in a group we need to communicate, we need to talk to one another. And there's so many guys out there that are silent on the bike. I've got a reputation for being really gobby. I know that, and maybe that even stops other people from speaking up. But when you're working in a pace line, talk to people. I can't see the mistakes I'm making because I'm focused on what I'm doing, and often I've got sort of blinkered vision anyway. So talk to the guys that are around you. The more a group talks, the more successful it will be in working together. So that's my little bit on communication. But as usual, the end of the ride we had a little sprint, so we're going to flip forward to that here. Slightly more interesting sprint this week. I was stuffed. I really didn't have legs for it this week, and you can see that Cameron's gone to the front and he's pushed the pace on. Adam's in his wheel, and I knew Adam was someone I wanted to follow. He's quite a fit guy, so I just thought I'd sit in his wheel and see what happens. So it's a good strong effort here, and I wasn't feeling particularly good, to be honest. Just thought I'd stay behind these guys and see how things pan out, see who comes through. I think Cameron's really giving it everything he's got here because he's been on the front for quite a while already. He's trying to play a little bit tactical, back off, and he's going to save himself the sprint. Adam seems to have done this every time he's been out with us. He finds himself too close to the front, and now he's stuck. Fair play to him. A lot of guys would just swing across the right hand side of the road. I certainly would, and just refuse to do any more work, and then he'd get all tactical. He just sat on the front. He just stayed there, and he keeps pounding out the pace at 25 mile an hour. And to be perfectly honest with you, you can see my heart rate's 191 at this point. I was in some difficulty just holding onto his wheel. The back of my mind, I'm thinking, right, well, what am I going to do when it comes to the sprint? But realistically, my legs were just telling me that, if you can, you'll be lucky if you can hang on to this guy for much longer. What I was trying to do here was just staying there, hoping that he'd stay on the front and trying to encourage someone to open out the sprint. So I'm just giving a little flick every now and then, trying to make the guys behind me think that I'm starting to sprint. I'm down in the drops. I'm trying to look as serious as possible. You can just see me flicking there. No one's buying it so far, but we're getting pretty close to the sprint now, and any minute someone's going to jump, and then as soon as they do, I'm going to jump on them and make sure I stay in second wheel. So Trevor's gone, Andy's time his wheel. I try to go, and I just get clipped there by, I think that's Andrew, who's come through. And this is one of the points I just want to make here. This is a Saturday sprint for nothing, and a couple of the guys were taking some big risks. We've got oncoming traffic, we've got guys who have just dropped an anchor and going backwards, and there's sometimes you just got to think twice because you hit a car head on, ain't gonna end well for you. But I think it's a fairly close sprint. I didn't really see too much of it. You can see how completely blown to bits there, but all in all, it was a good ride with the lads. That I really don't think a lot of the criticism that sort of was levelled at some of the guys from the uni later on was justified. It wasn't as choppy as you might think. I've spent ages looking through nearly 2 hours worth of footage, and what I've shown you there is probably the only examples of ropey riding I could find. Hey, maybe it was all behind me, and maybe it was I was the cause of it. Who knows? About how you communicate when you're out on a pace line, when you're in a break on a race. Keep talking, point out to the guys where they can improve, be nice about it, be positive about it. No one likes being slagged off, and I guarantee you, if you communicate and if all the guys in the group talk to one another, you'll have a far more efficient and successful ride. If you enjoy my videos, please subscribe, like and comment below. I'd love to hear what you think, and I'll see you next time.